Tupac's murder has been rumored to be an inside job for nearly 30 years.
You know, the whole Tupac Vegas situation was an inside job.
But now, Suge Knight's own driver has stepped forward with new details from that night. Details that don't just confirm the conspiracy, but reveal who actually pulled the trigger. Let's break it all down. Suge Knight's driver reveals shocking details. For years, the truth was buried under layers of silence. But now, decades later, it's Suge Knight's driver who has come forward with leaked footage and testimony claiming Tupac wasn't just the victim of random gunfire. He was the target of an orchestrated plan involving police officers, stolen millions, and betrayals that cut closer to home than anyone ever wanted to admit. And here's the chilling part. The driver claims Suge Knight knew who killed Tupac that night. He saw them. He spoke to them. And yet, nearly 30 years later, he's still refusing to name names. The first bombshell comes from an overlooked but devastating claim. The driver insists the same people who were involved in Biggie's death also played a role in Tupac's murder, and even Gene Deal confirmed it.
If Suge said that Rafael Perez and David Mack was trying to kill him, those are the same people that was trying to kill Big.
But that wasn't all. Those cops were also seen on the scene.
Because David Mack and Rafael Perez was seen at the scene. They got pictures of them at the scene. Rafael Perez was picking up bullets at the scene. Cops know you do not mess with the evidence.
Think about what that means. An LAPD officer, Rafael Perez, allegedly bending down and picking up bullets from the scene of Tupac's shooting. Evidence disappearing right in front of everyone's eyes. Not only is that a violation of every rule of police procedure, but it suggests an active effort to cover tracks. And yet this story fits into a larger pattern, because just seconds later in the leaked discussion, the motive is spelled out: money.
Tupac put an audit in 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to his murder and start firing people and trying to figure out where his money was at and where it was going.
The story here is chilling. Tupac wasn't just rapping about betrayal. He was actively investigating it. Just before his death, he reportedly ordered a financial audit at Death Row Records. People around him were being fired. The paper trail of millions of dollars was about to come to light, and then he was silenced.
So now, if you've been stealing money and everything could be connected to you, what are you gonna do? Get this hothead in a situation?
But the leak doesn't just accuse LAPD or Death Row insiders of betrayal. It drops an even more explosive detail. Suge Knight himself allegedly showed Tupac a hidden gun compartment inside their BMW, a secret drop box built right into the car. According to whispers from those close to the circle, this wasn't just some random feature. It was meant to be a last line of defense, a way to stash heat in case things got ugly on the streets. Imagine that. Tupac, already paranoid and sensing danger everywhere, riding through Las Vegas with a weapon literally inches from his hands, placed there by the man sitting beside him. Some claim Pac even joked about it earlier that night, brushing it off as just another one of Suge's insurance policies. But the fact remains, if that compartment was real, it means Suge anticipated trouble before the shots were even fired, raising even more suspicion about what he knew and when he knew it.
Pac was not going to go anywhere and feel safe unless he had a gun or he was close to a gun. You understand? Unless he was safe, he wasn't going to feel safe unless he had a gun or close to a gun.
If true, this changes everything. For years, the official story has painted Pac as unarmed, blindsided, but the driver insists Pac either had a weapon or at the very least knew where one was. Which raises the question, when the shooters pulled up in that white Cadillac, why didn't Pac fire back? Was he reaching for the gun, only to be cut down first? Even Keith D, the Southside Crip, who has publicly confessed to being in the car that night, admitted Pac appeared to reach down as the Cadillac rolled up.
Well, in the book, you said that as you're driving up towards the BMW with Suge driving and Tupac in the passenger seat, and you said that Tupac pulled out a gun.
It looked like he was reaching, yeah. Yeah, it did.
The problem is, no gun was ever recovered from Pac's side of the car, which means either the Dropbox detail was covered up or someone made sure that evidence disappeared before investigators could seize it. And that brings us back to Suge, because according to the driver, Suge knows exactly who pulled the trigger.
Suge was there, and even though you in a hostile situation and guns is firing out, you're gonna get that glance and that look at the individuals in the car.
That's the revelation no one wants to admit. Suge was right there. He made eye contact with the shooters. He even knew some of them personally. And yet, even now, locked up and with nothing to lose, he refuses to publicly name names. Why? The driver suggests it's because Suge sees it as snitching. And in his world, that's worse than death. To Suge, being labeled a rat would erase every ounce of fear and respect he built over decades. His entire identity was built on being untouchable. A man who lived and died by the code of the streets. Breaking that code, even in the face of murder, would make him a target not just from rivals, but from his own circle. But the cover-up doesn't stop with Suge's silence. According to another leak, even federal agents were aware that huge sums of money were changing hands behind the scenes after Pac's murder. It wasn't just a gang feud anymore, it was business at the highest level. In one interview, Keith D himself admitted the FBI told him that Eric Von Zip, the Harlem drug lord tied to Bad Boy Records, kept $1 million that was allegedly meant to pay for Tupac's hit.
Well, in fact, you know, there was the rumor that after Pac got killed, Puffy gave Zip $1 million that was supposed to be handed over, and Zip ended up keeping it.
If that's true, it raises darker questions. Who fronted that money, and why wasn't Zip ever charged? Was it incompetence by law, enforcement, or a deliberate choice to protect bigger players? Because if the feds knew and still looked the other way, then Tupac's murder wasn't just a drive-by in Las Vegas. It was a conspiracy with fingerprints reaching deep into the music industry, law enforcement, and the underworld alike. Tupac's murder was a contracted hit tied to music industry figures, and yet no one was ever prosecuted for it. Meanwhile, Suge himself has given interviews over the years where he drops contradictions of his own. At one point, he even suggested Tupac isn't dead at all.
Because Tupac not dead. Tupac not dead. If he was dead, they'd be arresting those dudes for murder. You know he's somewhere smoking a Cuban cigar on the island somewhere, you know what I mean?
It's classic Suge, defiant, mocking, and cryptic. But when you line it up against what his own driver is leaking, it's hard not to think Suge has always known more than he let on. And then, there's the haunting detail about Suge's own injury that night. He was grazed in the head by a bullet. In later interviews, he said he didn't even realize it until after Tupac pointed it out.
Pac said he was shot. I'm like, you shot? I'm driving, telling him I'm finna get to the hospital. Pac looked at me and said, you know what? You need the doctor more than me. You the one shot in your head. And we laughed the whole time going to find our way to the hospital.
That moment humanizes Pac in a way no conspiracy theory can erase. Even as he was bleeding out, he was joking with Suge, pointing out the irony that Suge looked worse than he did. But it also proves something else. Suge was alert, conscious, and engaged during the shooting, which makes the driver's claim even more damning. Because if Suge was that aware, then yes, he almost certainly knows who fired those shots. It suggests money at death row created motive for betrayal. It suggests Pac had a weapon but never got the chance to use it. And most of all, it suggests Suge Knight himself has been carrying the names of Tupac's killers in silence for nearly 3 decades. And yet, as shocking as all of this is, it's only the tip of the iceberg, because the next part of the driver's leak doesn't just focus on the shooting. It points to what happened before that night, the warning signs Pac ignored, the tension inside death row, and the betrayal by people he thought were family. And once you hear that part of the story, the question shifts from who killed Tupac to why was he set up by the very people closest to him? The betrayal inside death row. When Tupac Shakur signed with Death Row Records, many thought it was his salvation. Suge Knight bailed him out of prison, gave him the platform to record All Eyes on Me, and turned him into the most influential rapper alive. But the very label that gave Pac his freedom may also have been the trap that led to his death. According to Suge Knight's driver, shooting in Las Vegas wasn't some random act of violence. It was an inside job. And the deeper you look, the harder it is to deny it. In the leaked conversations, the driver spells it out plainly. The same forces that orchestrated Tupac's downfall were the ones manipulating Suge, Biggie, and even Puffy.
You know, the whole Tupac Vegas situation was an inside job.
An inside job. That's not the language of random beef. That's not about Orlando Anderson in a casino lobby. That's about people within death row, within law enforcement, maybe even within Pac's circle, making sure he didn't leave Vegas alive. But why? Why would anyone want Tupac gone at the height of his career? The answer is simple.
What's the reason?
What's the root of all evil?
Money.
Money. Somebody wanted control of some money. Some people were spending money that they shouldn't have been spending. Tupac put an audit in 2 weeks or 3 weeks prior to his murder.
The audit, it keeps coming up. Tupac was reportedly going through the books, questioning contracts, demanding to know where his millions were going. And for Death Row, an empire built on intimidation and backdoor deals, that was unacceptable. Pac's hunger for independence was a threat. Rumors swirled that he planned to leave Death Row and start his own label, Machiavelli Records, taking not just his music, but also other artists with him. Suge Knight himself denied that in later interviews, insisting Pac loved Death Row.
You don't take a person like Tupac who, if you listen to every song on All Eyes on Me, every song on Machiavelli, every time he do an interview, what's the first thing he say? Death Row. Tupac loved Death Row.
But whether or not Pac planned to leave, what's clear is that he was rocking the boat. And when you mix money, betrayal, and LAPD corruption, you get a perfect storm for murder. The driver's leak also paints a disturbing picture of how law enforcement looked the other way. Even when shooters were openly confessing, nobody was arrested. Suge himself once pointed out the absurdity.
Why you think nobody been arrested if they said they the one killed Tupac?
Because they're snitching to the police, so they ain't gonna get arrested.
It's a staggering claim. Suge is saying out loud that the shooters avoided prison because they were working with police. And if that's true, then Tupac's death wasn't just tolerated, it was facilitated. But betrayal didn't only come from cops or record execs. It may have come from friends. In another leaked interview, Suge reveals that Tupac didn't trust certain people in his circle, even those close to Suge himself.
Even though I trusted Eric B., it took Pac a while to even trust Eric B. on that level, on the simple fact that he was from New York.
This detail matters. Pac was paranoid for good reason. He'd already been shot once in 1994 at Quad Studios in New York, and he never fully trusted East Coast figures again. That paranoia bled into death row, where even allies were viewed with suspicion. And yet, it wasn't paranoia when the betrayal was real. Take Keith D's account of the shooting itself. Sitting in the Cadillac that pulled alongside Suge and Tupac, he admits Pac made a sudden move, possibly reaching for the Dropbox gun Suge had shown him.
Pac pulled out a strap, and that's when the fireworks started. One of my guys from the backseat grabbed the Glock and started busting back. The first shot skinned Suge in the head, and I thought that motherfucker was dead.
It's chilling to hear it from the man himself, and it confirms the driver's claim. Pac had access to a weapon, but he never got the chance to use it. So why didn't death row security intervene? After all, Pac and Suge were rolling deep that night. Multiple cars of bodyguards, entourages, and affiliates followed them to Club 662, and yet somehow the white Cadillac slipped through, pulled up alongside their BMW, and unloaded shots without a single bodyguard stopping it. The driver calls it mind-blowing.
They get past 6-7 security cars to roll up next to Pac.
The question is unavoidable. Were the bodyguards told to stand down? Was security deliberately pulled back to create the opening? Because it's hard to believe that with half a dozen armed cars in the convoy, nobody intercepted the shooters, and while the streets whispered, the industry thrived. Death row began crumbling soon after Pac's death. Interscope distanced itself. Artists like Snoop Dogg walked away. Meanwhile, Bad Boy Records, Death Row's bitter rival, continued to rise despite whispers of dirty money and backdoor deals. The leak even suggests that Puff Daddy himself may have narrowly escaped implication thanks to Eric Von Zip pocketing that alleged $1 million payoff.
Thank God he never gave him the money, right? Think about it. If he gave the money, Puffy will be in prison now, money for hire. A murder for hire.
That's not just gossip. That's a claim tied to FBI conversations, which means the federal government knew far more about this murder than the public was ever told. And yet, despite all the betrayals, all the corruption, all the confessions, one haunting fact remains. Tupac was still alive after the shooting. He wasn't killed instantly. He fought, he cracked jokes, he reassured Suge even as he bled out.
Say, homie, I'm straight. I love you, homie. I'm gonna be straight. I love you too. Woo, woo. That's what it was.
Those were Pac's final words to Suge, words of loyalty, love, and defiance. But within days, the machines around him, the cops, the hospitals, the record label, ensured he never spoke again. Suge Knight's driver calls it what it was, a setup. Tupac wasn't just killed by bullets. He was killed by betrayal, by money, by silence. And the truth, as ugly as it is, has been sitting in plain sight for years. Even the game years later would say what every insider already knew.
I feel like the individual that killed Tupac is dead.
Right.
So arresting Keith D after all this time for his role or his not role in, the death of Tupac, pointless.
The streets know, the industry knows, the cops know, but the silence continues. Because here's the thing, Pac wasn't just a rapper, he was a threat. He was too powerful, too loud, too unpredictable. He was about to break free from death row, shine a light on stolen millions, and build his own empire. And that made him dangerous, not just to gangs in Compton, but to the record industry and the police who had their fingerprints on death row's success. And that's why the driver's leaks matter. They confirm what so many have whispered for decades. Tupac's death wasn't a drive-by. It was a calculated elimination. But if you thought this was the end of the revelations, you're wrong. Because in part 3, the driver unleashes the most shocking detail of all. What happened after the shooting and why some still believe Tupac Shakur never died that night in Vegas. The aftermath and the ghost of Tupac. The gunfire stopped. The white Cadillac sped away into the night. And there, in the middle of a Las Vegas intersection, sat Tupac Shakur, bleeding, wounded, but still alive. That's the part people forget. Tupac didn't die on Flamingo Road. He fought, he talked, he laughed, he even reassured Suge Knight. And yet, when asked years later, Suge dropped a bombshell that confused everything. He claimed Tupac never died at all.
Tupac not dead, n***. He was dead. They'd be arresting those dudes for murder. He's somewhere smoking a Cuban cigar on the island somewhere, right now. You know what I mean?
To some, it sounded like trolling. To others, it was confirmation of the Tupac Lives conspiracy. But when you combine that with the driver's leaks, the The missing gun, the tampered evidence, the FBI whispers, it raises a darker possibility. Maybe Suge was telling a twisted kind of truth. Maybe Pac didn't die in the way the world was told. Consider this, no one has ever been convicted for Tupac's murder. Even when Keith D went on camera, in interviews and in his own book bragging about being in the Cadillac, nothing happened for decades.
Basically, he got himself wrapped.
As the game put it bluntly,
who killed Tupac, who killed Biggie is no mystery that live in LA, man.
Biggie, I don't know. I'll be honest.
We gonna keep you in the not know. And
you can keep me in the not know, that's fine. I'm okay with that. But the Tupac story I've known for a good 15 years.
The streets already knew, the police already knew, which makes the lack of justice almost louder than the gunshots themselves. Meanwhile, Death Row Records, the empire Pac had helped build, began to collapse. Sugar went to prison, Snoop walked away, Interscope pulled its support, and in Sugar's own words, the cops made sure of it.
They always knew the truth. I heard those KPD recordings. They knew from day one. They didn't want to help us. They wanted to destroy us.
The betrayal wasn't just one night in Vegas. It was a campaign. Pac's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a demolition of the most powerful label in hip-hop, orchestrated with police fingerprints all over it. And then there's Suge Knight's silence. The driver insists Suge could have ended the speculation at any time. He could have named the shooters, cleared up the conspiracies, brought closure to millions, but Suge never did.
He said, I'll never say it, because to him, he'll be a rat. But right now, you could alleviate a whole lot of for the world and make good a big.
But it wasn't just about the money. It was about just speaking up for the truth and ending all the pain once and for all.
If he tell a God honest truth of what happened and who did the shooting that night in that car, that don't make him no snitch. He was a victim. That don't make him no rat.
It's haunting. The one man who knows the truth refuses to say it, not because he can't, but because he won't. And so the silence continues, feeding the myth that maybe, just maybe, Tupac never died at all. The driver also revealed another disturbing reality. Pac didn't trust everyone inside Death Row, and sometimes his instincts were dead on. Even Suge admitted that Pac was cautious, wary of people around him.
Pac didn't like he didn't like the people she fuck with, you know what I mean? So Pac thought it was some fake shit, and then at one time, Pac felt like the brat was trying to be Snoop.
Even as he dominated the charts, Pac was surrounded by jealousy, distrust, and enemies disguised as friends. He knew it. Suge knew it. And in the end, the driver's leaks suggest that paranoia wasn't paranoia at all. It was prophecy. But the most chilling claim, that Pac's murder wasn't even supposed to happen that way. Some insist the plan was never to kill him that night. It was to set him up, get him arrested, put him back behind bars by catching him with a weapon.
If Tupac caught on tape doing something like he was doing, he going back to jail. His papers is going to be revoked. So he's got to go back to jail anyway.
But the setup spiraled. Instead of an arrest, it became an execution. And that brings us full circle. Suge Knight's driver leaked the truth not because it's a story, but because it's a confession. A confession that the LAPD was there, that money was the motive, that Pac was betrayed from within, that Suge knows who fired the shots, and maybe, just maybe, that Tupac's death isn't what the world has been told. Because if the shooters confessed, if the cops had evidence, if the feds knew about the money, and yet no justice ever came, then the only conclusion left is the one nobody wants to face. Tupac Shakur wasn't just killed, he was erased. The ghost of Tupac still haunts hip-hop, not because of who he was, but because of what his murder revealed. A music industry riddled with corruption, a police force tied to criminal activity, and an empire that crumbled under the weight of betrayal. And thanks to this leak from Suge Knight's own driver, the silence is broken. The question now is, will the world finally listen? Or will the truth about Tupac's murder remain locked in that BMW, alongside the secrets Suge Knight still refuses to say out loud? If you enjoyed this video, click on any of the cards on your screen for more content.